Hey guys, and welcome to SkillLink. In today's episode, we are going to take a look at artificial intelligence and machine learning. Why? Because everything that we do these days seems to be driven by it. Today, we have Sarang here with us, who is not only going to tell us how artificial intelligence works, but he's also going to demonstrate how we can use computers to see images in the real world. So, Sarang, tell us, why is artificial intelligence all over the place, and why is it that we should give it so much importance?
Well, a couple of reasons, Srinath. First of all, I think right now AI is in a great place. It can solve a lot of challenging problems, and with the improvements in the computing power over the last few years, I think AI can be used for solving problems that can actually impact humanity a lot.
How? The only applications I see is for shopping and making our phones more annoying. What else is it used for?
Well, in addition to that, AI is used in a lot of medical devices.
Okay.
For example, Google in the last couple of years has been working on how you can actually take images of your retina to actually understand what type of diseases that person can have, estimate BMI, whole lot of crazy stuff, and they're able to do it at scale. And the nice thing is, these type of devices, you can actually have AI into these devices, and these devices can be sent to tier 3 cities where you don't have really good quality doctors, and you can really improve the quality of medical care over there. And that's one of the exciting things that AI can do now.
Okay, so how is it that a computer is actually able to recognize different images? How is it able to kind of, recognize a shirt and differentiate it from a pizza or a retina for that matter?
Well, see, at the end of the day, if you look at it, a computer works with numbers, and it's really powerful in manipulating numbers, and that's kind of the starting point. So, in a way, if you want a computer to be able to understand, what a shirt is or what a pizza is, it needs to be able to convert that image into a set of numbers. So, let's just take an example of an image, and here I'm showing a shirt, and as we know, right, an image can be decomposed into a set of pixels, right? If you take each and every pixel, the thing is it has just a single color, right? And what I can do is I can further take each of those pixels and I can decompose them into a red channel, green channel, and blue channel. And for each of those channels, the single pixel can have values between 0 and 255. So if you take the red channel, if something has a value of 255, for the red channel alone, that means the pixel is going to be colored only red. But then in this entire process, what we're able to do is we're able to convert the image of a shirt into 3 sets of numbers. So if you're familiar with the matrix, each and every channel here is a 2D matrix. So you have 3 sets of 2D matrices, and that is going to be a starting point for the computer to understand what image is there in it.
So what is the next step after that? How is that differentiation made?
Well, before we talk about identification, we need to essentially understand some fundamental concepts in machine learning. So let's take a simple example. I'm going to draw a couple of points, right? And if I ask you the question, okay, can you draw a straight line that passes through the first point? Then your obvious answer is going to be something like this, right? Now here is the thing, in order for you to draw a line, there are only 2 parameters, it's slope and intercept. And with those 2 parameters, you can essentially have infinite line combinations that actually passes through that particular point, right? So that's kind of a very trivial problem. Now let us say that you have 2 points, right? If you have 2 points, then you can technically draw only a single line between those 2 points. In other words, there is one value of slope and one value of intercept, which is guaranteed to give you this particular line. Now let's just build on this example. In the same graph, let us say that I have 3 points, right? Now obviously I can draw it this way, right? But what I'm doing in this approach is that I'm kind of giving away, or I'm not showing enough importance to this particular point. I can draw a line like this, and in that case I will be ignoring this point. Similarly, if I draw a line like this, I will be ignoring this point. So in a way, you kind of have to draw a line in such a way that each of these points, or the distance from each of these points, are not too high, right? And this is what you would call as an optimization problem. This is something a computer would do on an iterative basis, and once it passes through enough number of iterations, it would be able to give you an answer which offers the best compromise in terms of errors or distances from these 3 points. And when you have that final iteration, that is when you say that you have a final model. Once I have a fit, what I can do is I can take this new line, which is my machine learning model, and then what I can do is I can give it a new value of x and I can compute a new value of y.
How does this apply to images? How is it that we apply this to pixels and imagery?
So far what we have discussed is that an image can be broken down into pixels, and each of those pixels can be broken down into R channel and a green channel and blue channel. So now here is the thing. When you are trying to build an image classifier, the first thing you need to decide is, okay, what are the classifications of images that your model supports? See, for example, at the start you said, how does a computer recognize if an image is of a pizza or say a mountain or a camera or whatnot. So these are what I would call as categories. So say that your image or your image recognition model works for 10 different categories. Essentially what I have drawn here is I have drawn a one-dimensional array, and here each of these array represents your category. So for example, the first category, let us say that the first category represents shirt, right? Then the first number is going to represent a score that the model would predict, and the second number that it predicts is going to be for say a cat. In other words, for an image classification problem, your machine learning model will always predict a set of 10 numbers, right? These numbers are nothing but scores, Srinath. So the score essentially indicates how likely this image is going to belong to that particular category. So for example, if you get really high scores in the last category or in the last array location, that means that the image is most likely going to belong to that category. That category can be anything.
All right. How is it that you are able to translate these pixel values into probability codes?
Okay, super. So the scores are computed based upon something called as a loss function. In our previous example, the loss can be calculated as a sum of the errors, right? The error is nothing but the deviation between the original point and the predicted point. And since there are 3 points, I can essentially calculate the sum of errors. I can calculate the sum of errors, and that's going to be the total error. And what I'm doing is I'm minimizing the total error. Similarly, in this particular case, I can actually estimate an error because during my training, I actually provide a known value for this particular distribution, right? Because if I'm showing the image of a cat, then I know that cat is in the second position, so this number should be maximum. So if you're speaking in terms of probability, in the second location you should have a value of 1, whereas everywhere else you should have values of 0, right? So you know the final answer, and when you do a prediction, that prediction is going to have a different set of numbers or different set of scores. You can look at these two set of scores and you can figure out where the error is maximum. Now here's the thing, during training process, you might actually see that the model says that, hey, there's only 50% chance that it's a shirt, and then there's a 50% chance that it's a cat. So what you need to do is, you need to make sure that the second score should be lower and the first score should be higher. And this is done by something called as backpropagation. So once you understand what the error is, you can go and correct the required layers, and then you can modify the weights in such a way that when the image of a cat is shown, the second category's probability is much lower. And this is not done manually. This is done as part of the learning operation. So if you remember the 1D example, the linear regression example, I said that the system iterates so that the error gets below a particular value. You do the same thing here as well. And the more training images you provide, the chances of controlling the error is also much higher.
So what happens if I have a shirt with a picture of a cat on it?
Well, a good model would still say that it's a shirt, but then if the model is not, say, well trained, or if the picture of the cat is really, really big, then there's a very good chance that you can actually have equal probabilities that it's a shirt and a cat.
Can you give us an insight of how this machine learning process actually takes place? Because it seems a little vague right now.
The input to the model is the image, which we know is pixels. And the output is essentially a PDF, a probability distribution function, which is a set of probabilities. So clearly, what you're doing is you're taking your original image, which is 2-dimensional, and you're converting it into a 1D array. So here what we generally do is, from the image to the final output, we do several operations. And in the example that we are showing today, we are talking about convolution neural networks. So here what we do is we essentially do a sequence of convolution operations and something called as the max pool operation. Right? So in this process, what we essentially do is we keep on reducing the data, and then once we do enough manipulation, the image at the end of those manipulation will be feature rich, meaning I can kind of show an example. See, for example, here, can you figure out what image this is?
I need a bit more of information.
What about now?
No.
Right now?
Okay, you're drawing something like a shirt, a t-shirt.
Exactly. So you can see that this piece was very, very critical in figuring out that this was a shirt.
Yeah.
Right? In other words, in order for me to figure out if something is an object or not, I don't need the entire richness that an image offers. Because if I have to understand everything, and if the computer has to think that, hey, in order for something to be a shirt, it should contain all those details, then it's never going to find a shirt. Because even if the slightest background changes or if the color changes, it's going to miss out. So while doing convolution or max pools, the key objective is to essentially figure out the key features of the image. And that's what these operators do. These are mathematical functions which you apply on the original image, and you do that on a sequential basis. I'll kind of just talk about convolution and one example for max pooling. See, for example, let us say that we have an image which has 9 pixels. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a convolution operator which has 4 weights. Now these weights, Srinath, are something that you will have to determine, right? And when we say a machine learning model is trained, that means for a set of images, the machine learning model has figured out what these weights would be. And like I said, the weights would be in such a way that the error is minimal, right? So here, for example, let us say that I have 5, 10, 15 and 20. These are, say, the pixel values for your R channel. Okay, so when you do convolution, what it does is it takes 5 times W1 plus 10 times W2 plus 15 times W3 plus 20 times W4. Now initially you would guess the values for the weights. So say that all of them are equal to 1. So then you will have 5 plus 10, which is 15, 15 plus 15 is 30, 30 plus 20 is 50. So now what you have done is, instead of using 4 pixels, you have reduced that information into just a single number. And similarly, if I do the convolution for this block and this block and this block, you will see that I'm essentially reducing 9 numbers into a set of 4 numbers. And max pooling is again very simple. Instead of estimating or instead of doing a dot product, it's going to just figure out the maximum value in each of its strides. So for example, here you can easily say that the maximum value is 20, and say that here the numbers are 9 and 25. In this case, the max number would be 25, and so on. So even in max pool 2D, you would essentially have 4 numbers, right? Now you can think of you can think of doing these operations again and again, as many times as required, and this is one of the variables.
Okay, so what's happening here is that while for us humans, a shirt is defined by a collar and a sleeve and so on, by buttons, but for computers it is defined by a number. Is that right?
Exactly. So what you can think of is, once you have figured out all the weights, you should be able to use those weights, and then when you look at the different layers of the neural network, there will be a layer which uses these weights, correct, which could be your CNN or any of the subsequent layers. And if you actually apply those correct weights, and if you are able to visualize the result, it will actually tell you, how a computer sees a shirt, how a computer actually recognizes a picture of a bird or something like that.
You've been using the term neural networks a couple of times. What exactly is a neural network?
Okay, see, the shortest example that I can give is whenever you're solving a math problem, say something like y is equal to x square, here x is what you would call as the input and y is the output, and the function which you're evaluating, which is called as f of x, is x square. So when x is equal to 1, what is f of x going to be equal to? It's going to be 1. And when x is equal to 4, f of x is going to be equal to 16, right? Now this right here is essentially a known problem where the function is already known. Now when you use neural networks in the context of machine learning, what it does is when you give the inputs and outputs, it is recognizing this f of x for you, right? And neural networks is essentially a framework for solving problems like this.
If it's just a framework to identify mathematical functions, why is it called a neural network exactly?
So that's a great question. It actually, I mean, the reason why we do that is because the inspiration for this entire idea comes from how neurons operate, right? So here it's called as neural network because you actually have inputs, right? So which in case of image is just pixel information, and what each and every neuron does is it takes that information and it produces some output. Now the output depends upon the mathematical function that's actually placed inside that particular neuron. And since there are several layers of neuron, it's actually called as a neural network. And if you have a large number of layers in your entire neural network, this is called as deep neural networks, right? In other words, to create a simple machine learning models, you can have inputs and you can just have a single layer which just takes that input, does some operation and gives outputs. But things like image recognition, vision processing and audio processing, your neural networks needs to be very deep because the data has a lot of dimensions, and depending upon the problem that you're trying to solve, your output can also be a multi-dimensional output, right? Just like what we saw in this particular case where the output is essentially prediction for each and every category, right? Which is not a very simple input, which is not a very simple output.
Okay, so clearly artificial intelligence is something which is applicable to all streams. You are a mechanical engineer, but you seem to be really well versed with AI. How does someone who has not studied computers or who has not been through this kind of rigorous training pick up on learning artificial intelligence?
See, a small corrections. I wouldn't call myself an expert. I'm basically dabbling around with a lot of simple problems. Because in a lot of ways, the way machine learning is done, if you look at the math behind it, it is very similar to how a lot of softwares do optimization work in mechanical engineering. And since I have a little background in that, I'm able to pick up fundamental concepts in machine learning. So the problems that I'll be demonstrating today, from an implementation or complexity point, it's very, very simple. We are relying upon a lot of open source code to do it. But to answer your question, yes, it doesn't matter what your major is. You can definitely pick up artificial intelligence and machine learning. For example, the code that I'm demonstrating today and the examples that I was able to do it because I'm also taking courses from Skillink, right? Though I'm one of the founders of it, I really enjoy learning what other instructors are putting out. And I've been looking at the Autonomous Masters program that we recently launched, and I've been taking a couple of courses. And based on those courses, I've created the example that we will be discussing today.
Okay, so let's get down to the demonstration and see how computers can recognize images and imagery.
Alright, so here I have some sample code that has been taken from the OpenCV's website, and essentially this is like a very simplified webcam software. So what I have is I have a secondary camera there and I have an object in front of it. So we all know that this is a water bottle. So what's going to happen is when I run this code, it's going to launch this particular webcam, and what I have is two video capture devices. So the first couple of lines I'm just saying I'm asking the code to use this particular camera, and then it's going to open up a preview. So that's what I'm going to do first. So using the command line tools, I'm just going to run this, and you can see that the camera is now available. And if I hit spacebar, it's just going to capture that, and hit escape. When I do that, you can see that it is saying writing the file testing.png. So now what I can do is I can go to the classifier tool, and you can see that the classifier tool is reading the testing.png image. And if I run this and just give it a few seconds, you can see that the image from the camera is now being shown, and you can see that it's predicting that this is a water bottle.
Fantastic. Now, what if I swap the object for something else?
All right, sure. So let's try it out.
let's say I keep my phone over here.
Okay, so I'm just going to do that, and maybe let me just hold it for you. So I have the camera, and it's very important. It's very important to make sure that it is as center as possible, and then let me just capture it and hit escape. All right, so the image has been saved. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run the code again, and it basically says that this is actually a cellular or a telephone, which is pretty nice. Yeah. So now let's try out a different example. Maybe try out this notebook.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to hold it here and make sure that the entire notebook is captured. All right, so something like this. Oh, sorry. And then if I run the code again, it actually says that this is actually a menu, which is quite interesting.
This entire machine learning process reminds me of how we learned to identify objects when we were in school, right from A for apple, B for ball, to actually learning from our own environment. This process doesn't seem to be very different from that, is it?
This one is much more hard, and it's not that accurate. That's the only thing. I mean, you're right. I mean, the way we learn is just amazing. But then I think, at least as of today, I think the computational power that a human brain can perform is just unbelievable.
Thank you so much, Sarang, for taking the time off to explain how artificial intelligence and machine learning works. It was certainly very interesting for us to see how everything comes together and how different the world we see is from how computers see the world. And I hope you guys also enjoyed watching this episode as much as I did. And until then, stay tuned to SkillLink.